That evening, everything started completely normally. So normally that I still sometimes think about how quickly an ordinary workday can turn into a nightmare. I worked at a small city cafe with a girl named Madison. During the day, families with children came in, and toward evening, office workers, construction workers, and people who simply wanted a quiet dinner after work would stop by. Madison and I often closed the cafe together. One man started coming in regularly. At first, he simply complimented Madison, and then he started leaving his number on the checks. She threw them away. One day, he asked her out. She turned him down. The next day, he came back and asked why she had rejected him. Madison calmly explained that she simply wasn't interested. He stared at her for a few seconds, then said she would change her mind. After that, we didn't think about him anymore. Until that evening. The last customers left around 10. It was raining outside. We turned off some of the lights, flipped the sign on the door, and started finishing up the cleanup. A few seconds later, someone knocked on the glass. It was him. He stood under the awning, staring directly at Madison. I walked over to the door and told him the cafe was closed and that he needed to leave. But the man didn't even look at me. He only looked at Madison and gestured for her to come outside. She shook her head and yelled at him to leave and leave her alone. That's when he seemed to snap. He punched the glass. Madison jumped back. I immediately called the police. When he saw the phone in my hand, he became furious. He started hammering at the door with everything he had. His fist, his palm, his elbow. The glass groaned and filled with cracks. He kept hitting it even after splitting his knuckles. Blood smeared across the glass, but he seemed not to notice. He screamed that Madison had to come outside and go with him. I could only hope the reinforced glass would hold, and it did. Then the man suddenly stepped back. For a second, we thought he was leaving. But then an engine roared from the parking lot. His headlights lit up the windows. He drove the car straight toward the entrance. Several parked cars stood between him and the door. He tried to squeeze between them. There wasn't enough room. A deafening crash followed. His car slammed into one vehicle, shoving it sideways, then hit a second one. The man didn't even stop. He abandoned the car in the middle of the parking lot, jumped out, and ran toward the cafe. I could see his face through the cracked glass. He looked completely deranged. There was so much rage in his eyes that I realized he wasn't gonna leave on his own. He charged forward and slammed his full weight into the door with his shoulder. The entire structure shook. He hit it again and again. Madison was crying and backing away while he kept demanding that she come outside. I held the phone to my ear and watched the road. And finally, I saw flashing lights. Sirens filled the air. The man heard them too. He stopped in front of the door and stood there for a few seconds, breathing heavily. Then he looked at Madison and smiled. After that, he turned and ran toward his car. He managed to leave the parking lot just seconds before the police arrived. The officers inspected the damaged vehicles, reviewed the security footage, and recorded his license plate number. But they couldn't find him that night. Madison didn't come to work the next day. She called me that morning and said she was leaving to stay with her parents in another city. She had found a note in front of her car. It contained only a few words. "Next time, you're coming with me." They never found him. Madison left. I stayed working at the cafe. I never saw him again. But ever since then, whenever we close late, I always look through the glass door at the parking lot several times. I checked the cars. I checked the far corners. I saw a wrecked car in the middle of the desert and pulled over to help. At the time, I had no idea how badly that decision was going to change the rest of my night. It happened at night on a remote highway in New Mexico. I had been a truck driver for years, and I knew how dangerous the heat could be, even after dark. That night, I was so tired that I caught myself nodding off several times. The road was almost empty, black desert on both sides, no houses, no streetlights, just my headlights and the hot pavement. As I came around a bend, I suddenly saw skid marks. I slowed down immediately. Ahead of me, a wrecked sedan sat partly off the road. The front end was badly crushed. Steam was rising from under the hood. Both doors were open. I pulled my truck onto the shoulder. The first thing I did was take out my phone and call 911. I gave the dispatcher the road number and my direction of travel. I told him there had been a serious crash and that there might be injured people. The dispatcher told me to stay on the scene. I grabbed my flashlight and walked over to the car. "Is anyone there?" No answer. There was nobody inside. The airbags had deployed. Glass was scattered across the seats. Warning lights were flashing on the dashboard. I walked around the car, and then I heard a knock. I stopped. Another knock. The sound was coming from the trunk. At first, I thought something had come loose during the crash. Then I heard another knock, and right after it, a muffled scream. I tried to open the trunk. The lock wouldn't move. I had to pull on the lid several times with all my strength before it finally opened. A woman was lying inside. Her hands were tied behind her back. Her legs were tied too. Tape covered her mouth. I quickly pulled it off. She took several desperate breaths. Then she screamed, "Watch out! He's waiting for you!" I froze. She tried to sit up, but she was too weak. "He's hurt! He's still coming! Run!" I looked up, and I saw him. A man came from behind the car and ran straight at me. His face was covered in blood. One arm hung almost uselessly at his side. He could barely stay on his feet, but he kept coming. He swung at me. I stepped aside just in time. The punch missed. The man lost his balance and dropped to his knees. I tried to push him away, but he lunged at me again. We grappled. He was heavier than me, but he could barely stay standing. I managed to knock him down and hold him against the ground. He struggled several times to break free. Then he stopped. Red and blue lights appeared in the distance. Police. An ambulance. The man saw them too. He suddenly got up and ran, not toward the road, straight into the desert. I stayed with the woman until the police arrived. Later they discovered that she had been kidnapped. The man was connected to a group that transported drugs through New Mexico. He had been driving at extremely high speed, trying to get away from another vehicle, when he lost control and crashed. After the crash, he left the woman in the trunk and hid in the desert. He was waiting for someone to stop. He needed someone to get close enough. And if that woman hadn't warned me the second I opened the trunk, I probably wouldn't have had time to dodge. They never found the man that night, but a few days later, police told me they had found his body in the desert. His tracks led almost a mile from the wrecked car. He had most likely died from blood loss. I still think about that night and how quickly a normal drive home can turn into a fight for your life. I was 26 at the time, and I worked as a waiter at a small roadside cafe in Northern Oregon. It stayed open late because it was right off the highway, and truckers and other drivers stopped there throughout the night. My shift ended at exactly 2 a.m. The cafe stayed open after I left, so I said goodbye to the cook and the other server, grabbed my jacket and walked out to my car. There was an old dark SUV parked at the far end of the lot. I had noticed it earlier that night. Actually, I had seen the same vehicle several times that week. At first, I didn't think much of it. People left their cars in that parking lot all the time. But when I got into my car, I noticed the SUV was still there. I drove home. About 15 minutes later, I felt something strange. My car started pulling slightly to the right. Then I heard a dull, rhythmic thumping from the rear. I slowed down and pulled under the shoulder. When I got out, I saw that my rear tire was completely flat. I was standing there trying to figure out what to do when headlights appeared behind me. The same dark SUV. It stopped a short distance behind my car. The driver's door opened. The man from the cafe stepped out. He walked toward me and asked, "I can help?" I immediately felt uneasy. Maybe it was because I had already seen his vehicle at the cafe. Maybe it was because he clearly remembered what car I drove, or maybe it was just instinct. When you work nights at a roadside cafe, you start getting pretty good at reading people. You see enough strangers at strange hours that you learn to notice when something feels off. I told him I was fine and that someone was already coming to help me. That wasn't true. He stopped beside my car. "You sure you don't need any help?" I shook my head. He just stood there. Then he asked if I could open the trunk so he could get my spare tire. I told him I could handle it myself. He smiled, but there was no smile in his eyes. I got back inside my car and locked the doors. I knew I needed to call 911. I took out my phone and dialed. The man walked over to my window. He started tapping on the glass. "Come on," he said. "Just open the door. I'll change the tire for you." I didn't answer. He knocked again, harder this time. I held up my phone so he could see the screen. 911. His expression changed immediately. The smile disappeared. He stepped back and stared at me. Then he walked toward his SUV. For a few seconds, I thought he was leaving. Instead, he opened the back door and pulled something out, a tire iron. He came back to my car and raised it. The window shattered. Glass flew across the driver's seat. Some of it hit my face and arms. He reached through the broken window and tried to unlock the door. I didn't even think. I started the engine and slammed on the gas. The car lurched forward. Because of the flat tire, the entire vehicle started shaking violently. The steering wheel was pulling hard in my hands, and the car kept drifting toward the shoulder. I could barely control it, but I was moving. I looked in the mirror and saw the man running back toward his SUV. He jumped inside and started following me. I couldn't drive fast, maybe 40 miles per hour at most. The car was shaking so badly that I was afraid the tire was going to completely fall apart. I kept both hands on the wheel and tried to stay on the road. Then I saw flashing lights far ahead. Police. The SUV behind me suddenly slowed down. Its brake lights came on. The man stopped in the middle of the road for a few seconds. Then he suddenly turned around and disappeared in the opposite direction. I kept driving until I reached the police cars. The officers immediately surrounded my vehicle. I was shaking so badly that I could barely explain what had happened. They found broken glass all over the inside of the car and examined the damaged tire. One of the officers told me I was extremely lucky. Later, they reviewed the security footage from the cafe. The officer told me they could clearly see the same man approaching my car before I left. And then they saw something even more important. They saw him puncture my tire. He had deliberately damaged it, so I would be forced to pull over somewhere away from the cafe. They were able to identify the man and locate his SUV. They also found footage from several previous nights. Apparently, he had been coming there over and over again and sitting in the parking lot for hours. He wasn't there for coffee. He had been watching the employees. And according to the police, that night he deliberately followed me and waited until I was far enough away from the cafe before forcing me to stop. They never told me exactly what they thought he planned to do. I don't think I want to know. I only know one thing. If I had opened that door, I might not have made it home that night.